Today, we're looking at a red ink by Papier Plume, Lover's Red, obviously named for me. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that if you want to skip around, you can, but if you got the time, check out the entire video. You can follow me over on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Viscosity Van Gogh with a medium nib, used it to write for a day, and to take my notes for this video. For the first writing sample, I use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. There are additional writing samples later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some very nice shading. Look at how red starts lighter, gets darker, gets lighter, gets darker. 3-letter word, 4 color transitions, outstanding. Extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, plenty of very nice shading. Look at how quick starts lighter and gets darker. Brown goes darker to lighter, fox, lighter to darker. Beautiful, and 7 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and some very nice shading. Brown starts dark, gets light, and gets dark again. Fox starts light and gets very dark. Dog starts light, gets dark, gets lighter at the end of the G. 11 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both shows plenty of color variation, and we got plenty of color variation. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Now the extra fine is a whole lot lighter than the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen. Now the shading is incredibly subtle to notice here. You have to look at like the word fox. Look at 10 seconds, very different tones. Look at how brown starts a little lighter, a little darker. Now it does transition to much lighter, but it doesn't jump out at you, this shading. If you look at it, there's something a little different color-wise as it moves through. It's a very nice, gentle shade. 10 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, not quite as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it still offers some fairly nice shading. Fox starts lighter and gets darker. Jumps starts lighter, gets darker, and gets lighter again at the P to the S. 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show us some good color variation left to right, and we do get it. Again, it's a very subtle variation. And Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some very nice shading. Quick starts darker, gets lighter, gets darker. Brown goes from dark to light. Fox goes from light to dark. Jumps light to dark, 7 seconds. Medium is quite a bit darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub. Medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, and almost really no shading. Only a couple lighter spots, like the bottom of the Z and the bottom of the Y are lighter. 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show us plenty of color variation in the medium, a little bit in the extra fine, which is about what we got in the writing. I agree with Vita that we learn a lot when we do multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this is really interesting as this is a red, but it's got kind of this grayish purple on the bottom. And it's pushing up. And then we see a separation and a non-aggressive red. As it's not super bright. It's just a nice light red. So that's interesting because the purple and red I would really expect to get more of a brown, but we get a dark red. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and that purpley gray that we got, very much on the bottom, very much staying there, only a little bit moved up after 10 minutes, and then we get the same performance from the red on top. So that gray that purpley gray, we're expecting that to stay. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, lowercase G and H, I don't use this in a note-taking situation, a very risk-averse person when it comes to my notes, and I'm not willing to lose any of that. Water is lifting most of these inks up off the page. That bluish gray is mostly gone. You are still seeing some of it there, but I do think that given some more time, then water is going to do it, because that's only 30 seconds of a drop just sitting on top. Now, strangely, Pen Flush did not completely remove this from the page. It really almost looks darker and grosser. I can't explain what happened with the Pen Flush. Not at all. It's not near, like when I look at my sample numbers of exactly when stuff, this was number 230 that I actually tested. And this isn't next to something that it was a sloppy transfer. That's not it at all. So I'm at a loss for Pen Flush. I believe that the water would be able to do it, though, looking at that. Now, the 1/3 bleach solution, although you don't need it to clean it from your pens, does completely remove it from the paper, but you're not going to need that. I test the viscosity or flow using a tilt test, which I'm going to link the video showing how I do that. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Papier Plume's Lover's Red has a viscosity of 1.54, making this a very wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Papier Plume's Lover's Red has an average dry time of 11 seconds, so despite it being very wet, its dry time is faster than normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Papier Plume's Lover's Red, I would prefer to find an ink to complement its color on the page, and in this case, complement meant don't draw attention away from how beautiful this is. So I went with a nice black, Noodler's Bulletproof Black. The second writing sample is done on TWSBI, Leuchtturm 1917 and 28-pound copy paper. Here we're looking at TWSBI notebooks. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. I mean, you see it more on camera than I do here personally. But the TWSBI is a thinner type page. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. Now the extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub. The extra fine is no feather spread, halo sheen. Shading does come through. Look at the word brown. Starts a little darker, gets a little lighter. Quick starts a little darker, gets a little lighter, gets a little darker. It's there. It's not jumping out, screaming color change at you, but it is there. 6 seconds to dry. Now the medium is about the same tone as the extra fine. It has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some shading, which is like not too bad. I'm surprised. I really wasn't expecting shading here. Brown starts a little light or darker, gets a little lighter, gets darker at the end. Fox starts lighter, gets darker. Over goes from lighter to darker. I don't know why I personally wasn't expecting it here, but I wasn't. I really thought that the color change in the paper was going to make a bigger difference. It took 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows color variation, plenty of it. The medium shows none, which is what I expected, but we got plenty of color variation in both of the writings. Leuchtturm 1917. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and the beginning remnants of maybe some shading, but I'm not really going to call it some shading. But red does start a little lighter, get a little darker. Plume does start darker, get a little lighter, get a little darker, but that's about all that we see. Now the extra fine is a whole lot lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shading. 4 seconds to dry. Medium is a whole lot darker than anything else on the page. No feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any. And last up, 28-pound premium copy paper. Now the medium that wrote the top didn't do very well, but the extra fine did fairly well. It didn't really it's got one or two tiny spots that bled in a little bit more. Not bad ghosting. Medium, a lot of ghosting. I wouldn't use it. The medium has a lot of feathering all over it. It's all tiny feathers again. It's not something that would stop you from using it, stop you from being able to read it. It's not so distracting it's a problem. But just to be aware that it is there. It has no spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. Now the extra fine is lighter than the medium. It has feathering in spots where I went over it a little bit more. So like the K where it's the full up and full down, it's a little bit darker, but the feather's there. That's just about the only shading that we actually get on here. It has no spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. Now the Scrubby does show us color variation, although we really don't get color variation in the writing. That is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Papier Plume's Lover's Red? It can offer some very nice shading, and it's a very interesting tone. The thing I did notice is that with very broad, wet pens, it went down so dark, it almost looked like blood, which was a little disturbing. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? Well, to avoid the blood look of the super wet pen, I would go with a medium flow broad or medium to really get a very interesting red tone, but not get anywhere near that blood color. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.